The patient will turn around and say, do you know what I'm going through? Do you know what my family is going through? I say, yes, I do. I've worn those moccasins. I've gone through it twice. I understand what you're going through. I understand what your family is going through. I understand what your friends are going through. And this is the ace up my sleeve, Anne. And if I can do it, so can you.
Welcome to Doctor's Story. Today we have with us someone who is an amazing person and she has some really amazing stories to share with us, Neerja Malik. She has been through a lot, including cancer and cancer therapy, but she's been through it and she's done it really well because she is very resilient, and we're going to learn this from her today. She's handled everything that has come her way so well, and that makes her such an inspiring person. So with that, I'd like to welcome you to our little meet.
Thank you so much, Anne. I've been looking forward to this ever since we had a rather long chat. Somehow we got along like a house on fire. And I'm sure that this interview is going to light up many minds.
Thank you. Let's hope so. So let's talk a little bit about going through cancer itself.
Mm-hmm.
So how was it that you were diagnosed? What happened before?
So I'm very good with dates. I remember them with monotonous regularity, and some of my friends get very irritated. Especially when I say, oh, you know, I've known her since I was 2. And that friend of mine says, you want to tell people your age, go ahead. Why are you telling them mine? Oh, she's 7 years older. Oh, that one is 6 years younger. You know, it's all that. So another date. On the 2nd of February, 1998. 2nd of Feb is my father's birthday. So the date stuck in my mind. I felt a twinge of pain, not even pain, a little twinge, not even an ache, just a twinge. In Hindi, you would call it chuban, chuban, on the left side of my chest. So, as is usual, our hand goes there, and I felt a little lump. And I used to do a lot of aerobics, and I was very slimline, and I thought to myself that I'd overdone it, and I forgot. Now, you see, I have so much of faith in God because on the 12th of Feb, 10 days later, I got the same twinge, the same chuban. And as is one, which I had forgotten about those 10 days, touched the spot, and I got the shock of my life. In 10 days, something that was not even pea-sized had grown enormously to a larger lump. That is what alerted me. The first time in 98, I demanded to see a doctor, and that is how that happened in 98 on the Friday the 13th. On the 12th, I went to the doctor. He said he wants to do a mammogram and he wants to do an FNAC, a fine needle aspiration cytology. And he said, please register. So when I went to him, I told him the story that, you know, on the second, 10 days earlier, I felt a twinge. And, you know, today, 10 days later, on the 12th, I felt this twinge again. And from this small, it had become that big. And then he did a very thorough physical. He's touching my armpit and he's saying, oh, and how long have you had this here? So what are you talking about? Had what where? And he made me feel my armpit. And the lump that I felt in my armpit was much bigger than the tumor in my breast. And when they did during my surgery, they removed 21 nodes. They discovered that 9 of those 21 were malignant. They were cancerous. And that is what happened the first time. The second time, on again, it's related to a friend's birthday, on the 17th of November in 2004, I decided to lie down on my stomach. And because from the time of my surgery in 98, I hadn't slept on my stomach. And I used to just sleep in my stomach in my young days. So when I turned onto my stomach, I felt very uncomfortable in the breast, which was the right breast. And I touched it, and I instinctively knew that it felt exactly like the other one had felt so many years earlier. And I woke up my husband and I said, I think it's happened again. And I explained to him what I meant. And he said, well, now I told you how I started my counseling. I was going to the hospital every day. So he said, well, you go to the hospital every day, so just get yourself checked up. So I said, yeah, that's what I'll do. So that is how I got diagnosed the second time, both times, because I felt that God had intervened and given me these twinges and this urge to sleep in my stomach so that I could be aware of this. I will like to digress a little here. So one girl, she came running up to me. Her mother had cancer. I was counseling her. She told me, she said, Neerja, I hate the 1st of Jan. And I said, why? She said, because my mother was diagnosed on that day. She's looking very sad. And I said, you know something? If I were you, I would celebrate it twice. She said, what? I said, yes. Because 1st of Jan begins your new year. We all celebrate it, whether we are Christians or Hindus or Muslims, world over, 1st of Jan. And secondly, I would celebrate the fact that your mother was diagnosed. She said, what do you mean? I said, because she was diagnosed, she was able to get treated. So isn't that a happy, good, lucky day? I said, I was diagnosed on Friday the 13th. I'm very happy with Friday. The whole world will think, unlucky number, Friday the 13th. For me, it was very lucky because I was diagnosed. And therefore, I could get my treatment done because I knew what the matter was. So it's just how you look at it. It might be the same thing, but you can look at it like this, or like this, or like that. But if you change it to make it easier for yourself and for those around you, then life is good. Answer your question?
When you were diagnosed the first time, what was it like to hear this diagnosis? What did you feel?
So my husband and I sat in the car and I took him along with me because the previous day I'd had my mammogram and my FNAC. And I promise you, I don't know if when we play holy, it's the big, it looks like an enlarged injection, and you go around pumping water, colored water at everyone. I promise you, it looked like that. Huge needle and huge. Oh, it was awful, and it pained a lot. 19th. So I took him the next day, and we went to the pathology department, and the head of pathology turned to me and she said, "Mrs. Malik, I'm afraid I've got bad news." I said, "Yes, doctor?" She said, "You've got cancer." Now, after that happened, we took the reports to Dr. Stumpf. He was an onco-radiologist. He's the one who had diagnosed me the first time. And first time meaning the previous day. You lose track of time. And so he promptly immediately, he took me to the surgeon, and we met Dr. Hemant, and he took me to the oncologist, and we met Dr. Ramesh. And then the whole day went because they wrote out a whole lot of tests. And so I got busy doing those tests. And on the way back in the car, I turned to my husband and I said, I have 2 lunches today. So can you ring up this particular friend and tell her that I won't be coming for lunch? He said, okay. And we're sitting in the car and we on our way home. And he rings her up and he says, Neerja won't be coming for lunch today. So obviously she'll say, why not? And he said, she's got cancer. Now, and you won't believe it. Till then, my mind was on autopilot. I hadn't had time to deal with the fact that I have cancer. So my immediate and involuntary reaction was to turn to him and give him a biff or a mukka on his arm. And I said, why couldn't you have told her I've got a bad stomach? Why did you have to tell her I've got cancer? Not because I was scared of people knowing about cancer, but I hadn't come to terms with cancer. I hadn't come to terms with what had happened to me. And then I quickly had to dry my tears. I started crying. And I said, the other friend, I'll go home. It was her birthday today, my other friend, Veena Ashraf. And I said, I'll go home and call her. Because the kids were coming back from school. They were 7. They were 7 years old, my twins. And I had to behave as if nothing had happened. So I didn't have time to deal with it. And then they told me that, you have 25% chances of survival, and that's not in India. Only if you go to America or France, because in those days, they had, in 98, they had started stem cell research in those 2 countries. And I wept for 3 days. I wept. Not because I was scared, but because my twins were only 7. I didn't want to leave them. And after the 3rd day, they say tube light, enlightenment. That happened. And I suddenly realized, I said, who told me this? Did God come down and say, he wagged his finger at me and said, you've got very short time to live. You better count your days. Your days are numbered. You better start counting backwards. No. It was a human being who said all this. And I dried my tears. No more tears. You know, that lovely shampoo. And I made a determined decision. And I said that I will live for my twins. Drid Nishchay, determined decision. And then I went through cancer again, and I went through my uterus and ovaries removal, and then I went through a lump they found here, and then I went through 2 lumps they found on my legs, and various surgeries, and then 2 years back, septicemia, and I needed 210 injections in the jugular because the veins in my arms could not be ever used. I had ports both times, and the veins in my foot were used for withdrawal and for insertion 204 onwards. And they gave up. The veins in my feet gave up. They just collapsed. It didn't work. So they had to, you know, enter here and give me injections. So yes, I took it all with never a thought of, no questions asked. Will I survive it? Will I not? So I had a goal in mind, which is what I've learned to tell all my patients. The goal was, I'm living for my twins. I'm living for my parents. I'm living for my sister and her family. I'm living for my husband. I'm living for my in-laws. I'm living for my friends. I'm living for my patients. I'm living for so many people who love me. And I'm living to pass things on to people. Because if you go to a cancer patient and you tell him, psychologist goes, anyone goes, pat them on the back and say, hey, be positive. The patient will turn around and say, do you know what I'm going through? Do you know what my family is going through? I say, yes, I do. I've worn those moccasins. I've gone through it twice. I understand what you're going through. I understand what your family is going through. I understand what your friends are going through. And this is the ace up my sleeve, Anne. And if I can do it, so can you. So that is how I deal with my patients. I tell them 3 things. 1, consider the word cancer as only a word. When I talk about a glass, a cell phone, a fan, a table, do I break into beads of sweat? No. But when I hear the word cancer, oh my God, why? Because 50 years, 100 years, the ideas have come down that cancer is the big C, it's a bad word. You die, you die, you die. But things have changed, science has advanced. And if in 98 I had a surgery and there's a big hole in my armpit, there's like a well where they took out the 21 nodes. In 2004, I had a microsurgery. There's no well there, and they took out 38 nodes. And God is great, not even one was malignant. And now you don't have to take out the nodes, you go for a sentinel node. So you see how science is advanced. I went through chemotherapy. I vomited. I was so nauseous. In 98, in 2004, I didn't vomit even once because the chemotherapies are improving and the medicine that is meant for the side effects of chemotherapy, they're coming a long way too. What about radiation? There was only cobalt. And cobalt, the rays go straight. So they go through your breast and they go right into the heart and the lungs behind. Now you can shop for your radiation where there's so many different kinds. And The rays are simulated in such a way that they move out and they come and only affect the bed of the tumor. They do not go to the organs behind, like through the breast. No, they stop here where the tumor was. They do not go through to the heart or the lungs. So there's been such a vast improvement between 98 and 2004. And I tell people, I said, listen, early detection, cancer is curable. Prevention is better than cure. Cancer is curable, cancer is conquerable. And the two things that I have spread like anything. One, the words of my father who said, face, don't fight cancer. And two, that I call myself a conqueror, not a survivor. And that is where the phrase, cancer is conquerable, has come. Thanks to you, yours truly. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud to have been able to make an impact. And I'm proud to tell people that, yes, cancer is conquerable, curable, and comes a time when we can go to a chemist and give a prescription for cancer. And he gives us the tablets, and we smile and we go home. God willing, that too shall come to pass.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for doing this interview, for spending
God,
so much time with us. Yeah,
God,
it's been such a pleasure to speak to you today.
thank you, Anne, and thank you to all the listeners who are listening in. And God bless everyone, and the divinity in me bows down to the divinity in all